Hey everybody, this is Jose. Sorry I'm super late. Um, Hopefully someone will see this, but otherwise, we're talking about chapter 5. I'm addressing the three questions that were posed. I'm going to go ahead and answer the first question and the third question. So the first question is in regards to whether you are responsive or assertive. Um, how do you analyze that? And then it asks, why is self analysis helpful in identifying the cultural style and perception of a person? So on page 5.1.1, uh, the authors define assertiveness as the capacity to make requests, to actively disagree, or to stand up for yourself without attacking another person. I thought that was super important. You want to make sure that you are uh, communicating what you want or what you believe in a respectful manner, but you're being straightforward. So aggressive or assertiveness isn't necessarily being aggressive as much as it is just um, making yourself known, making your opinion heard. And then responsiveness is the capacity to be sensitive to the communication of others. So you want to make sure you're a good listener, uh, and to recognize the needs of and desires of others. So obviously these are kind of opposites and should be pretty easy to identify whether you're one or the other. But a person can analyze if they are assertive or responsive by recognizing where they fall within social styles. And the social styles that we studied include amiable, um, which is when you're a relationship specialist, uh, and amiables like to conform. They're kind of easily persuaded, quiet. They're supportive, uh, and then it says they're comfortable working in environments where they can provide services and be supportive. Um, so they're helpful in relationships, but they're not necessarily aggressive or assertive. So that would they would lean more to responsive, um, high responsive, but low assertiveness. I screwed that up. I'm sorry. And then the next style is analytical. Um, you're technical, very technical. I've been told that in work, that I'm very technical about how I get things done. I don't necessarily care for just going all out super quick and then wearing myself out. I like to analyze what I'm doing and then methodically get it done. So it says they're low on both responsiveness and assertiveness, which kind of makes sense because I work by myself, even though I wouldn't say I'm completely analytical. Um, but professions are science and engineering, so you can imagine that somebody like this is, they have intelligence or they're creative in a sense, but they're not considered assertive or responsive. So that's going to be kind of a challenge for them to communicate and others to communicate to them as well. Um, and then you have the driver, and I would assume just from the name that they're going to be very assertive. Um, they're considered control specialists. They're low on responsiveness, and I've worked with people that are like this, and we definitely clashed. It took a long time to form communication with this individual that I worked with. And then it says in the book, it states that these people might be small business owners. Um, they like decision making positions. They definitely take responsibility in directing others, and um, they like to be in control. So the next one is expressive. This next social style, and if you're an expressive, you're high on both responsiveness and assertiveness. So I remember they're saying that they're very creative, um, ambitious, friendly. So you would assume that because they're high on both social or aggre- I'm sorry, assertiveness and responsiveness, that they probably are pretty good at communicating, um, at least with the people that are drivers and analytical, or I'm sorry, amiable, and then analytical. It seems like maybe between analytical and expressive there might be a harder time communicating. Um, so self-analysis is helpful in identifying the cultural style and perception of a person, because according to the text on page 5.1.1, uh, we communicate with others based on how we perceive them and not on how they perceive themselves. So our perception forms into our identification of another person. So in order to properly perceive somebody, uh, we need to know how we think to avoid biases and misconceptions. And if we're aware of our social style, and those of others, this can help us to style flex, which was another discussion in the book, to better communicate with others. So we can mix the styles that we just defined earlier, um, in order to communicate with people from a different culture or a different style. And then I chose question 3, which is to evaluate why comparing and contrasting is considered the best way to understand generational communication. Um, so I've had a lot of experience with this, both mostly with people who are older than me. I fall within the category of Generation Y or millennial. Um, but I've had a lot of instances where I've come across these differences and had to learn the hard way, to alter my style of communication. I used to say dude a lot, and I know a lot of people didn't like that, who were older, so I don't say that anymore. So on page 5.4, it says that although it's important to understand that groups of people born in different generations share more similarities than differences, it's vital to be aware of, appreciate, and value the differences between the generations. Now, I think that this is crucial when working with any generational group, because we all want to be valued and appreciated no matter our communication style. All of us, we want to feel like we're important, like our voice is being heard. Um, we have a different way of communicating that, but I think we all want to be valued. Um, it is important to compare and contrast the differences in generational communication, because it can help us know which areas we need to adapt to other individuals. So, according to the text on page 5.4.2, 3 key findings suggest that 64% of those surveyed do not have a clear understanding of the communication preferences and perspectives of Generation Y. 75% reported that current communication methods were ineffective with young professionals, and 90% indicated that their own or their client's organization will be at risk if they fail to significantly adapt their communication methods and technology. That's kind of a huge deal. So companies are acknowledging that they identify the need for change. They need to implement uh, ways to adapt to this new phase, in generation, different generation coming through. Um, so we need to acknowledge the differences, when we communicate with each other, so that we can adapt and connect amongst different generations. Um, we need to acknowledge how we are communicating with someone from a different generation, and then we need to acknowledge as well what they are communicating. Nonverbal cues, I think, are huge. Like discussed in the book, regarding boomers, they prefer in-person um, meetings, so they don't like texts, and they don't necessarily care for social media. They prefer that in person, or at least a phone call saying, hey, communicating what you want. I've always believed and I've been taught that a firm handshake, and looking someone in the eye, especially when they're older than you, is considered respectful. So I think this kind of highlights the differences, in generational styles of communication. Um, and so you kind of need to meet in the middle if you're someone who's from an older generation, and you're kind of with an organization that's maybe got younger individuals. You need to kind of learn the language and learn how to perceive nonverbal cues, so that way you're not necessarily getting offended by everything or um, misinterpreting something. And I think that's it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.